the beginning of the week, there was a poll came out. I think it was on Sunday. It was published in the Sunday Times, sponsored by the Henry Jackson Society. And it was a poll of British Islam. And Sunday, Monday, all the chattering classes, the so-called right-wing commentators on Talk TV and GB News were grasping for the smelling salts, horrified at the results of this poll. I don't know where they've been for the past 20 years. I really don't. In fact, I don't know where they've been for the past 30 years since the calls for the murder of Salman Rushdie by certain elements of the Muslim community in the United Kingdom. That's how long this has been festering in the UK. So when they become very shocked that 32% of the Muslim population wants Sharia law, incidentally, it's far higher than that. And if you look at the polling data, I could go through it. I don't have time to do it, but it's actually far higher than 32%. The poll in 2015 that was carried out by ICM had 49% of Muslims in London wanting Sharia law and 43% of Muslims in the rest of the country wanting Sharia law. It was the way that the question was phrased in this poll that skewed things slightly. But anyway, putting all that aside, we know that every time a reputable polling organisation polls Muslims, the statistics blow a massive hole in the mainstream media narrative that it's just a tiny minority that believe these things. There's nothing to see here. They use the word Islamist. It's just the Islamists. Nothing to see here, nothing to worry about. And I've done so many videos on this, I get bored actually going over the same old ground. But what I want to really do, I saw Nigel Farage, and I suppose Nigel Farage is like drinking whiskey or smoking cigarettes, a bad habit. And we probably should stop watching him, but it is what it is. And I was watching Nigel, and again, he was shocked, horrified by this situation. Question for Nigel. In 2018, when Gerrard Batten became leader of UKIP, and he became leader of UKIP basically in a democratic coup to get rid of Henry Bolton, who his girlfriend had all sorts of allegations made against her about racism, etc., etc. Gerrard became leader of UKIP and took a very strong stand against the sort of nonsense that we've just heard in these polls. People that want Sharia law for the UK. People that want to stop people drawing pictures of Muhammad. People that want to marry 6 and 9-year-old children. You know, all that sort of lovely stuff that comes, where does it come from? I mean, and this is the other thing. The thing that really blows me away is that nobody ever looks beyond the polling data. Why do the people who are polled believe what they believe? 3 reasons. First of all, they've been taught it by their religious leaders and by their community leaders. That's the first reason. Second reason, it's found in the text of the Quran and the Hadith. Third reason, the Islamic State existed until the beginning of the 20th century. And obviously, the First World War and modernity did away with it and destroyed the last caliphate to a great extent. Since then, there has been a gnawing wound in Islam, because that's not what's meant to happen. That's not the way it's meant to go. So obviously, people who look at the Quran, believe the Quran, go, well, it's because we turned away from the Quran. That's why we don't have the caliphate anymore. So they're the reasons that people believe this sort of stuff and want Sharia law and want to take over countries, because it's in the text of their founding documents. It's in the Quran, it's in the Hadith, it's in the biography of Muhammad. Again, I've been talking about this stuff with Muslims, with ex-Muslims, with Muslim scholars, with scholars of Islam for years. I'm not a scholar. I'm not pretending to be a scholar. But I know a lot of people that are. And I've read a lot of books. Doesn't make me a scholar, because I'm not one. But the reality is that This could have been sorted out, or on the way to being sorted out, if Farage had not done what he did in 2018 and called Tommy and Tommy supporters knuckle dragging thugs, because the jibe was, the barb was aimed at Tommy. If he'd listened to Tommy, Nigel, if you'd listened to Tommy Robinson, you wouldn't have a plastic fake party that's going to go nowhere apart from getting us a Labour government. You would have had a proper party filled with proper patriots who weren't racist, who weren't knuckle dragging thugs. Many of us were veterans. Many of us were professionals. Many of us were people who actually really cared about the country and weren't on just some sort of some ego trip. Proper working class people, football fans, veterans, patriots, who stood for all the things that you claim to stand for. But no, because we said things about Islam that might have offended a few of your voters, you backed away and the UKIP project collapsed. And it shouldn't have collapsed. Farage should have actually come on board. And what's going to happen? It's going to be history repeating itself, and it is with the Reform Party. If you've been in For Britain or the EDL or anything like that, you can't join the Reform Party, or you can't hold office or stand as a candidate in the Reform Party. And look at the way Richard Tice is behaving towards candidates that have said stuff about Islam in social media. So Nigel, you should have listened to Tommy. You should have listened to Gerrard. You should have listened to all of us that were talking about Islam in 2018 and 2015 and 2010 and 2000 and 1998. Some of us have been looking at this for a very, very long time. All the time you were looking at the European Union, other people were looking at Islam and saying there's a problem there. And now we're left with nothing. We're left with no opposition, and we're left with what you, Nigel, call the liberal elite, standing there, placating a religion that has one idea at its core: domination and submission of the unbeliever. That sums up, Islam means submission. That's what it means. You submit or you die. You submit or you pay the jizya. That is Islamic theology and Islamic doctrine, boiled down and made very, very simple. Of course, it doesn't pan out like that in every Islamic country in the world. And the good thing about all this is most Muslims actually don't practice Islam. If they did, we'd have a big problem. Most Muslims are nominal Muslims. They don't really believe in it because they don't do it. They don't live it to the letter. But when you get the ones that do, taking control of a country, oh boy, you've got a problem. You've got Saudi Arabia, you've got ISIS, you've got Iraq, you've got Syria, you've got Afghanistan, you've got what's going on in Pakistan. There's a book written years ago called The Bloody Borders of Islam, and it's worth reading. Christians have been killed in Nigeria, Lebanon, Nagorno-Karabakh, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Pakistan, Afghanistan. Well, there aren't any left in Afghanistan. Iraq. There aren't many left in Iraq either. This is happening all over the so-called Muslim world. A silent genocide. Nigel, you should have listened to Tommy. Maybe you will listen to him now, and maybe you will drop some of the snobbery and some of the elitism. You pretend to be a man of the people, but when the real people joined your party, you demonised them and you walked away from the real British working class. And now this has come back to bite. And you're left there scrambling, not knowing what to do, when you could have had a party that could have been a bulwark against radical Islamofascism. But you didn't. You walked away. See you all soon.